You are live.
Sweet. There's nothing like starting a proper YouTube video with actual speaking rather than just like
Welcome.
slouching into it.
Yeah, let's do it though. Let's do it. I believe in us.
We're here to talk about Pokemons, your favorite 1990s merchandising phenomenon. Which is an odd one, isn't it? That obviously we're Arch.
There we go. Let's get us in the mood. Here we go.
Wonderful. We're our Arch nerds, obviously, so you know our Pokemon knowledge is probably on the up. I distinctly remember, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, for when the Pokemon movie came out.
Pokemon movie.
And I think I vaguely remember they're all giant. They go to this island and it's all giant Pokemon. And then they're robots. I might have just, this might be a fever dream. It's kind of like this is where Pokemon lives, really. But I went with like 5 or 6 friends. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
Well, imagine having 5 or 6 friends. If only we didn't like Pokemon, eh?
Catch 'em all. Right, we'll leave the Pokemon music there. But yes, we're here to talk about Pokemon. Because we don't have anything else to talk about just now.
Well,
not,
you know,
not that you're getting the dregs, listener. Not that you're getting the dregs.
It's been a quiet week. I mean, what do you want? Do you want fucking in-depth dive on the dangers of alcoholism? I don't think so. It's a bit too close to the bone.
The ongoing exhaustion of having children. But yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, there's lots.
I think we cover that plenty, Sam. I think we cover that plenty.
All right, that's a little fucking dig there. It's a little slide dig from Dave.
No, we're gonna talk about Pokemon because we've been playing separately. Some different entries, later entries to the Pokemon series, because obviously Pokemon, which vast swathes of people don't realize, because nothing based on a video game is ever successful, is based on a video game. That was the first thing. It's not the TV show. It's not the trading card game. It was a Game Boy game, the OG Game Boy.
OG,
the big satchel-sized one with about 4 pixels in black and white on the screen.
And we've done in a previous episode, because we have a massive back catalogue of 250 plus episodes at this point. We've done the first Pokemon TV show, and one of my favorite, I think our favorite parts of that episode, the pilot of the first one, is when we start with and then it transitions from the black and white video game into real life full color, a square picture. It's not widescreen.
Real life full color hand drawn animation from the mid-90s in Japan.
From the mid-90s, yeah. But like the pure excitement of that, and even 30 years later, and my children are watching this, and I'm like well into it. Like Pokemon has still, even after this long, has retained, I think, an incredible amount of cultural cachet, which in some ways like makes a lot of sense, because it hasn't really changed at all in all of that time. But at the same time, it hasn't changed at all in that time. We're still playing basically the same games, watching the same
people
stories.
People are still buying it, and there's new TV shows, and there's different essentially they've gone into the model which never works apart from this time when it worked. And I don't think Pokemon is the global phenomenon it was in the late 90s anymore. But then saying that, do you remember when Pokemon Go came out like 5 or 6 years ago? Like that was kind of a big phenomenon. Like fucking everyone was playing that,
including me. Like I was well into.
Sam hates fun.
I hate fun. I hate everything about fun. So after 25 years or whatever we're on now of Pokemon, it's more than that, isn't it? When was it? 93 was the first Pokemon?
30 years. It's been 30 years.
Holy shit. So after 30 years, I think it's 25 years since Ash started his quest to become, I want to be the very best, the best there ever was. And it took him 25 years. Only in 2022 was he made Pokemon Master. So we have gone from like this literally being our childhood, just mere seconds after we were born. until my children are playing it, and I think that's an incredible achievement. It's an incredible achievement for the Pokemon franchise.
Yeah, so Pokemon are like, let's dig deep into this. Like, let's not do a reciting Wikipedia podcast, because we've got plenty of them. Again, see our back catalogue.
Yeah.
But like, so Pokemon are fun, right? In theory, and they were fun in the 90s because it's these little like anthropomorphic monsters. They're all brightly coloured. They've all got silly names. They're quite cute, largely. Like, some of them look cool. Some of them are downright stupid. And I'm sure we can cover some of our favourite stupidest Pokemon. But the actual core game mechanic, and we talk about the gameplay leap of video games. There's a reason that we haven't played the most recent one, which is Violet and something, which came out a few months ago. But we did play Sword and Shield, which came out on the Nintendo Switch. Me, you, and Ross, who couldn't be with us because he's on assignment in Kanto beating the Elite Four or something, I'm sure. Like, the core gameplay mechanic hasn't changed really. In Pokemon, you are a small child and your parents send you off in the world to enslave and collect, and then basically like get into dogfighting.
Like cockfighting,
where you basically rove around fighting this gang across your like local area of adults who are also dead into dogfighting, and beating the regional like gym leaders who are like the
chief dogfighters,
the local dogfighting like champions, before you go on to fight the Elite Four, who are the 4 best dogfighting champions in all the land. Where you get a big trophy, and your dogs get their pictures put in the Hall of Fame, and we go clap, 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 clap. You can go and capture Mewtwo. That's right, people. Mew was never a Pokemon in the game. It was always Mewtwo for some reason. Like, that's stupid point number 1, is like in the very first game, the Pokemon you catch at the very end, the top Pokemon is Mewtwo.
Is it?
Start with Mew. Save that for the sequel.
Is it? Well, I have a confession. I have never completed the first Pokemon game, despite many attempts as a child, and also despite many attempts as an adult.
Sam, it's not that hard.
I know it's not, but it's
quite easy.
But it's more that I'm just like, every single time I'm like, oh god, here we go. And I think there's some mental block that I've got, because playing it as a kid, I think I remember playing it, but I didn't really get into it. Like, I wasn't into the video games. I was into the TV series. I was into the trading cards, which is an entire other thing. But like, the fact that you go at the end of the game and fight Mewtwo is news to me. I feel like I'm destroying my nerd cred right now. I mean, I'm pretty fucking nerdy. I have a podcast. Whatever levels, whatever measurement you want. There's Dave with his Pokemon cards. Look at
that. These actually, my niece gave me these. McDonald's did a thing last year where they gave away Pokemon cards with Happy Meals again.
Yep.
Which is a really cool like blast from the past, because I had thousands of these growing up. God knows how much.
Really cool manipulative marketing to make kids eat
my
junk
poor
food.
Mother buy. It's gambling for kids. Because you'd buy the sets of like the little packs in little fucking like cigarette packets, almost, and like you'd get 10 cards or 20 cards. Fucking 10 of them would be Nurse Joys, all the little potions, and then 5 of them would be shit Pokemon, and 5 of them would be not quite shit Pokemon, but you wanted a shiny one. It really is that basic. It's genius. There's a reason that they made all the money in the world. The trading card game. Actually a pretty shit game by all accounts. Nobody plays the game.
We never did. We had what energy cards? We had these energy cards. I hated getting them. Absolutely. What the fuck is this? So we had these energy cards which we never used, although they are essential, I think, to the point scoring system. And then it was a case of, well, we just kind of like like playing war. I shot you. No, you didn't. Yeah, I did. Like that was the level of Pokemon.
It's one of the things that reminds you that we are like, while we're arch nerds, and we'll read a book about the causes of World War One for like bedtime reading, and we'll have a podcast where we talk about Pokemon. Like card game nerds are just they're a different kind of nerd, aren't they? Like the kids. I say kids, 40-year-old men who play Yu-Gi-Oh and like Magic the Gathering and things.
Listen, we have to be able to look down on someone. And there's not many people that we can say are sadder than us, but I think we can include.
It's all of you losers playing tabletop gaming and tabletop card games.
Yeah, although Dave, I do remember
poker's sexy because it's gambling, gambler.
I do remember your stories of hanging out in the Games Workshop, as a sweatier nerd.
Yeah, and it was like, and Sam, the way it worked was it was like aversion therapy. It really set me straight. It was like one of these pray away the gay camps. It really prayed away the tabletop gaming by associating with people who do tabletop gaming.
Wow. You almost became one of them. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I'm 20 years clean from that shit.
20 years clean. At least now you're definitely reformed and you're not as sad as that. You're just sad in different ways.
In different ways. So I actually, I think the reason that there's this allure for the Pokemon games for me, I keep coming back to that. Well, like an emulator is obviously you can sit and play Pokemon Red on your phone on the toilet.
It's great. Amazing.
It's changed the game entirely. And I mean, you could always do that with a Game Boy. To be fair, you just run out of battery.
No, hold on. In the dark, with the original.
Not in the dark. Not in the dark. The screen's not backlit.
Exactly. What were you supposed to do? You had that horrible contraption with a light shining on it. Ridiculous.
Dark times, like kids don't know they're born, honestly. But I played the living shit out of those games. It always bothered me. Not bothered me. Like I understand why it exists and it's genius, and they can continue to do it. So every generation, there's like 2 games. There's an A game and a B game. So the first generation, and we're going to talk about the UK names because I know in Japan they vary slightly. But it can be broadly separated into the Japanese market and the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, 100%.
So it's red and blue in the UK, and then yellow's like the special edition version. But there are certain Pokemon you can't get in the game unless you have a mate. Basically, unless you have a mate who is equally as obsessed with Pokemon as you. I had a Game Boy and all the games, and I had a link cable, right? And I still could not. I did not have any friends who were into it to because you have to trade certain Pokemon from a Game Boy to another Game Boy to get them to evolve into the final Pokemon. As I say that, I can just picture people tuning off the podcast. I mean, if they've even tuned in. Yeah. But so to complete the Pokedex, and there's 151 Pokemon in the original one, right? Yeah. 150, something like that.
150, and I think.
To catch them all, you have to own red and blue, and you have to have a link cable and 2 Game Boys, basically. Or
hold on. So it isn't just a case, right? This is because this is what I thought. It isn't just a case that you need to get your parents to buy the game twice. You need to have 2 separate consoles because you need to be. There's no way of having red and then taking that cartridge out and putting blue in and then transferring. There's no way of doing that. You have to have 2 separate consoles and then red and blue copies of the game. Is that right? And the link cable, which is probably about 20 quid.
Yeah. So there are some Pokemon that don't appear in red, and there are some Pokemon that don't appear in blue.
Fuck you.
Appear in the other one. There's 5 or 6 Pokemon, which in theory, you could own 2 copies of red and get because it just involves the trade thing. And it always bothered me as a kid because I want to finish the game, and it's not a big thing in the game, but I want to catch them all. I want to do the Ash Ketchum adventure.
No. It is a big thing because it's literally the tagline of the series. Gotta catch them all, and it's you can't do that unless you're a 90s millionaire because you need to have, that's like 40 quid each plus however much the consoles were. That's mad. What, you can have friends?
It is. But I've played a lot of these games, and we'll maybe talk through some of those because I know that you've played a bit less of them, and it's interesting to sort of see where you come down. But I think you've watched more of the TV shows than I have, possibly because of your son.
Yes.
So I played the first generation, which is the red, blue, and I had Pokemon Blue because I'm just the coolest. red and blue and yellow, and then I played the second generation, which is gold and silver and crystal, and then they kind of ran out of colours.
For a bit.
I'll get the list of the actual games up. And then I played that, so I played them, and then I'm not sure I played any of the other ones on a native console because those are the only Game Boy ones. And then the following ones were Game Boy Advance, and I didn't have a Game Boy Advance for ages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you play these?
No. So I had the Game. I think I had a Game Boy Color. So I think maybe playing Fire Red was what I remember. That's the one I always go
Fire
back
Red's
to.
a Game Boy Advance game.
Yes, it'd be Game Boy Advance. Then sorry, that's right.
You could play Game Boy games with Game Boy Color, so it would have been red and green, red and
yeah. But no, I remember
red and
distinctly
blue.
being in color though. So that would be where I think. My God! So if we go on Wikipedia, there is a chart. There is like a fucking graph of different.
I'm looking at it now. Yeah.
Oh my God! This is horrific. So I think it just shows how many games have they managed to squeeze out of you.
Well, there's 9 generations of the game, so let's quickly go through them. So you got the first generation, right? 1993 or 1996. Sorry, we got that wrong. So, I got our face.
Nerd.
Gonna get some YouTube comments about that.
Yeah.
Gold and Silver came out in '99. I remember them because I think that's around the time I got my Game Boy Color, so I had one of those. Game Boy Advance.
Can we just hold on? Stop a second. Can we just take a second to just appreciate how amazing the Game Boy Color was? Like that console going from. Did that have a backlit screen? The Color? No. So it didn't even have a backlit screen, but still.
It had colour. I know it's a really simple, easy clue, but it was in colour.
Yeah, but I was just wondering if there was a backlit screen as well, because that to me is like when we start getting into like modern gaming. Like you can play it in the dark, you can play it in the car, you can play it outside at any point.
You couldn't play these in the dark without buying the prohibitively expensive. Basically, it used to click onto the top of the Game Boy,
and
it was a magnified screen. And it had 2 little bulbs on either side of it. You couldn't play it in the dark without one of those until the DS. None of the Game Boys had a backlight.
So we go from that to the iPhone in living memory. Like, what a time to be alive! What a time to be alive! Sorry, go on.
So to the Switch where you can play fucking Skyrim on a handheld device.
Yeah, that's not a good example. That's like a 40-year-old game, Dave. I mean, that.
No, but you know what I mean. That's a full 3D, big immersive experience.
So we're at the second generation, gold and silver, crystal.
The second generation, which is kind of like.
Go on.
The third generation is Ruby and Sapphire. I never really played them. I think I was basically either I was old enough that I wasn't massively interested, or I suspect that we were so poor that we could no longer afford things like. Game Boys and stuff. Like I had a Game Boy Color when they came out, but I think it's because my dad had temporarily flitted back into the situation and splashed some cash to buy some love. Which is a dad strategy that goes back thousands of years, presumably.
Yeah.
But I think that had finished by the time the Game Boy Advance came out because Ruby and Sapphire came out in 2002, so we were nearly teenagers then. So I never really played those, although I have played them on the emulator since.
But the Game Boy Advance is Ruby and Sapphire, isn't it? So that's like when we're into 32-bit, we're into color with a backlight. We're starting to get modern now, I think.
Didn't have a backlight on the Game Boy Advance.
The Game Boy Advance had a backlight?
No, it didn't. I've got one downstairs. I could go and get it to show you, but
it doesn't have a backlight.
It doesn't have a backlight.
So you can't play in the dark?
No.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's shocking, isn't it? The DS was the first one with a backlight.
Right, no.
I've also got one of those.
I'm right. No, hold on. We are both correct because I'm thinking of the SP. Do you remember the square one?
The SP wasn't a Game Boy Advance.
It was a Game Boy Advance. It was a Game Boy Advance SP which had the backlight because I remember having this one. This is one I remember having. So I don't know where we got it from. I have no memory at all, but I'm sure we had because I remember playing it. I remember playing one of the games.
So the SD was the one that was like a flip phone, wasn't it? It was like a DS, but it's square. The Game Boy Advance, I remember the one I've got downstairs has got like the see-through purple case, and it's a weird shape.
Well, it's actually ergonomic, whereas the hand cramps that would come from
the SD
playing
is
with a square,
ridiculous.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had one of those. I didn't realize they were backlit though. But it's a mad innovation. I've again, Nerdcast. I broke the screen on my Game Boy Color. It's a treasured heirloom, honestly. I broke the screen on it on a flight 10 years ago, and I put a backlight in it last year, and it was amazing. God, the 40 to 45 minutes that my attention was fixed on playing this thing that took me a long time, a lot longer than 45 minutes to replace the screen in.
But also that's probably the battery length as well before you're changing, double A's or triple A's, whatever it was.
Batteries are expensive, and they were expensive then, presumably as well. But I wasn't paying for them.
Right, let's keep going because I want to talk about the Nintendo DS for a second because I had.
Well, the DS is another console that I didn't own, again because I'm an arch nerd, and I think more importantly a single man. So nobody can tell me that it's unreasonable for me to be spending my money on buying myself a 3DS, which I did last year, and Pokemon games to play on it.
So cool.
Because that's what I can do. But I never had a DS because the DS came out in like 2005, I think, 2006.
I had a DS in uni. I had a white Nintendo DS in uni.
College boy, eh? I mean, literally.
Which I can't. I think I just bought.
Were there some Splinter Cell games on the DS?
Maybe. I have no memory. The only thing, I don't know why I bought it, and I think I sold it or got rid of it somehow. I have no idea where it is, and I wish I had it now. But I remember buying. The thing I played the most was the web browser. You could buy.
You're watching porn on a DS, man. Weird.
I bought a web browser for the DS, and that is the thing that's the memory I have of. Like, so this is what I'm saying when I say I skipped Pokemon games, I owned a Nintendo DS and did not play any Pokemon games on it.
Like, I think that's ridiculous. Goes to tell maybe the lack of popularity of Pokemon games. It's hard to track, but I mean,
I think they're hugely popular. I think this is a massive.
No, they are, Sam. But I don't think they were never the phenomenon. And there's a reason that we don't know the intervening titles well. They were never the phenomenon they were when the first generation came out. Again, until Sword and Shield came out, following all the buzz that was created by Pokemon Go. I think. Because you've got like 3 titles on the DS. You've got Diamond and Pearl, Black and White, and Black 2 and White 2. X and Y, we get really fucking running on Steam on names here. Sun and Moon, which has a TV show tie-in, I think.
Yes, which I have watched because Callum watched through all 52 episodes of the original Pokemon series, and then...
Are there only 52 episodes?
No, sorry. Is it 52? Is it 365 even?
I think it's 365.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. I was thinking it's 1 week, but it's not. It's one every day. So he watched all that, and then obviously Netflix says coming up next, Sun and Moon, and it's actually really good. It's actually really,
the Hawaii one. I'm playing through it on 3DS now.
Yeah, it's really really fun. It's really fun. Like and I think you've still got Ash. You've still got I think maybe Misty's in it, but maybe not Brock. Or I might be wrong about that, but. Like, again, it's the same thing. It's the same formula, really.
Well, I think the Me Too era was going to get Brock, whatever happened.
Quite right.
That creepy fuck.
That is a problem with all of them. That is a problem with the short skirts in the little, like the kids in the first one. You're like, whoa.
Some of the art design, I think that's quite common. Yeah, some of the like lasses, like all the enemies, all the trainers have like there's only like 7 or 8 different varieties of them.
Lad,
so they've all got the same name.
Yeah.
Lad and lass,
like
or
the
schoolboy or schoolgirl, and it's
mm-hmm.
and the boys are all fairly just fine, and then obviously the girls get sexualized. Welcome to, I guess, the world. Apparently,
this is. I know this is the thing. We can't even have Pokemon. We can't even have Pokemon without having. Goddamn fucking patriarchy ruining it. Like, come on. Damn sexy Pokemon. Jesus.
Damn sexy Pokemon. Don't go on the internet, Sam. There's scary stuff on there.
Oh, yeah. So can I pause for a second, though? Because just before we move on to 3DS and Switch, I am playing at the moment on my emulator on my Mac Diamond, or El Diamante, as the version that I've downloaded, is like half in Spanish. Like the fire types.
What the game is?
Yeah. So all the text is English, but the type of Pokemon or the type of attack says Fuego for fire. Or whatever. So there's like smatterings of Spanish through it. I've never selected what language it should be, so I don't know how it knows. But some of it's in Spanish, and the rest is in English. So anyway, and this is like the first non, like archaic Pokemon that I'm playing. This is the first one where we're into
non-archaic from 2006, which was nearly 20 years ago.
Exactly. And it's got this. Obviously, the 3DS, so it's got the DS, so it's got the two screens. The top screen is like just basically normal, and then the rest of it, the touch screen, is just basically useless. Like I don't know if it gets better in the other ones.
Nope.
But it's
not really
useless. I've just unlocked the Poker Watch, and I was like, oh great, I'm gonna have like some actual useful things. It's got a calculator, the time. There's a little
the calculator, by the way, which has no in-game use whatsoever. You are never asked to do maths.
What? Then there's the thing where it shows you what Pokemon you've got, and I thought, oh, brilliant! I can quickly switch them out, like because it's annoying to have to go into the menu, Pokemon, switch, place, all of that. Nope, I just press it, and the Pokemon makes a funny noise, and that's it. There's no action, and I'm like,
it's really basic, and it doesn't improve. Like I said, I've been playing Sun and Moon, which I think was the last 3DS title, like the most recent 3DS title. And they've done this annoying thing where the Pokedex talks to you. They've made the Pokedex a Pokemon in a confusing kind of. I'll explain more about that later.
No, tell me now.
So, like on the bottom screen, like sometimes the Pokedex will just be like giving you hints and like saying, "Oh, why aren't we going this way, buddy?" And I'm like, "What?" But other than that, it's like. Doesn't really have a use. The controls are still the same. The lack of innovation in the Pokemon games is phenomenal. So in the first one, right, you have the basic rules are you can carry 6 Pokemon, but you can catch as many more as you'd like. You rove around. You have to beat 8 gym leaders, and then basically solve like little puzzle dungeons essentially. Beating other trainers, and you have these moves called HMs, which are like surf and strength and fly, to get about and to solve these things and basically gate off the harder areas of the game until you've defeated the relevant gym leader.
You can cut the trees, can't you, to get through?
Yeah, exactly.
Into new areas,
and it's just a clever way. It's a funny way, a fun way. I do mean that, of like gating off like the harder parts of the game. Oh, you can't go this way because you haven't unlocked the thing to get you to go. And that's just game design 101. But from memory, in number 2, the only innovation is that there's 7 of them, not 5. They add waterfall and the whirlpool.
Wow. And you know what? I mean, all of the reasons that that's a bad thing are also the reason that it's a good thing, because it means like you can basically pick up a Pokemon, any Pokemon game. You know, the start of Diamond, as I'm playing from 2005, is basically exactly the same. There's a professor. We need to give these kids a Pokemon somehow, or we're going to get there, and then the rest of it's just go off and do usual gym battles, etc. But what I found interesting is that my son, who's 7, who is remarkably good at picking up video games, like it's a little bit scary how good he is at. I was showing him Stardew Valley the other day, and I've tried to show him before when he was a bit younger, maybe about a year and a half ago, and he was kind of not like Dad, what are we doing? It's farming. But actually now he's getting a bit older and his attention span's a bit more. And I said, okay, so what you need to do is you need to plant them, use the hoe to plant them, and then you need to get water and blah blah blah. So he figures that out, and then his watering can runs out, and he's like, he doesn't ask me what to do. He just goes down to the water and fills it up, and I'm like, oh, that was clever, well done. And then he runs out of seeds, and he goes into town where I said, oh, I think there's a shop that way, and he goes and buys from Pierre's, and comes back. Like it's amazing. It's amazing how quickly he can grasp stuff. But with Pokemon, the first game he played was Sword and Shield on my Switch. So I kind of taught him the thing, basically, there we go. He played that for a bit, enjoyed it. He won the final battle for me. I could not do it. I was stuck for ages. With one lap, and had to defeat Leon. And then we were on holiday, and he basically learned how to play the game and defeated the boss, which I'd struggled to do like 3 times because I hadn't leveled up my Pokemon or whatever.
You're an idiot. Yeah, I get it.
I know. I'm being surpassed already. But my point is, I then showed him the original. It was Fire Red, actually, on my Mac. And this was not with the controller. This was him having to remember that the X key, was X and S and A were all the keys on the keyboard. Within about 20 minutes, he was basically just going off and playing the game by himself. And that shows, I think, the consistency, because he started on the new one. He went all the way back to the mid-90s, and he could pick that up. And I think that's, as much as he's a really good video gamer now, it also just shows how successful the format is. And no wonder they don't change it. No wonder.
They literally haven't innovated. I mean, Sword and Shields is the one that we've played, the recent one we've played or tried to play. I mean, I did beat it with no trouble because I'm a grown man and capable of these. I honestly don't know why you struggled, Sam. That's a bit embarrassing.
Because I rushed to the final thing and did not level up my Pokemon off. So it was I had level 15 Pokemon in my deck or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's easily done. But
don't roll your eyes.
You've added better. I'm trying not to. You've added better. You've added better graphics, and they've removed a lot of the annoying things, because in the second generation, it's kind of frustrating. You're quite limited on the amount of moves you can have, and it's kind of frustrating that you've got to have 7 out of the available 24 moves that you can have in your party. 7 of them have to be these things to get past obstacles that aren't particularly good in battles. That's a lot. That's a lot, high proportion. So they've ratcheted that back. You don't have to do that so much anymore. They've added lots of more weird and wonderful Pokemon. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. Personal favorites on the stupid Pokemon is the Sandcastle Pokemon. The Teacup Ghost Pokemon is good, that evolves into a teapot. Again, that's a real thing that exists in these games. There's a lot of inanimate objects that they're just that's a Pokemon. It's the fucking magnet Pokemon. The magnet Pokemon was in the first one.
Was it Voltorb or something?
Huh? Yeah, it's Pokeball. Yeah, that's No, that's Magneton is the magnet Pokemon. This is the other thing.
Voltorb is just the names are quite.
A lot of the names are quite lazy. It's Magneton. It's the magnet Pokemon.
The one that really just was the Sword and Shield Pokemon from Sword and Shield, and I'm just what the hell are we doing? What is even the point of them? And it does go to the the in-universe super nerdy thing of who made these. Did they evolve? Is there a Pokemon God? How did we get to this point where we've got these super specific, but also human-based Pokemon? We've got Pokemon that's designed that's in the shape of a sword. Where does that come from? Did we invent swords after we saw that Pokemon? And all of that never really is explained. Probably rightly, but I've always been curious.
They never really get into it. It's a bit of an odd one that they never really explain. There's all sorts of theories, and they're fun, but ultimately it's just one of these worlds where these are Pokemon. They exist, and
shut up.
Some of them are inanimate objects, but sometimes they're not. And are they actual animals? Do they have intelligence? Some of them can fucking talk. I'm just looking at a list here to remind myself. There's Clink, which is a Pokemon that looks like a gear. There's Vanillite, which is the ice cream Pokemon that looks like an ice cream cone.
Oh my god.
There's a fish that looks like just the shape of a heart.
There's
What about some deeply stupid ones.
What about Jinx, the one that's
there's stupid and there's creepy, Sam.
The one that looks like a deformed Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like what are we going for here? And this is in the first generation. This isn't like we're on 7, 8, 9, whatever. Like, this is the first go. And we've got
well, 150 is quite a lot, and it's interesting that obviously quite a lot of those are also useless. And taking away from the game design a bit, like most of the baddies you face tend to have one or two different types. Like all the Team Rocket grunts have like coughing and muck, and Ekans, which is snake backwards, and that's the snake Pokemon. That's a particularly stupid one. And Arbok, which is Cobra backwards, is the evolution of the snake Pokemon. Again, they really didn't overdo the writing for a lot of the game. So, but then there's the more disturbing Pokemons, like you say, like there's Jinx, which is it's just the character with the design is really odd and like hard to, it's just a bit unnerving. Maybe you can get a picture up, Sam.
Yeah. Well, I think if you got this way through, you don't know what Jinx looks like. I mean, question yourself.
What are we even doing here? Yeah. But yeah, there's some deeply stupid ones and deeply pointless ones as well. There's a lot of Pokemon that you catch and you're like, well, you'd never use it because it's absolutely useless.
Yeah. Who is what is your favorite Pokemon? What's your like? Every single time I'm going to keep this in my 6, even though it's not strategically any good, but I like having it there.
I feel like the bug Pokemon get a bad rap in the game. There's like a whole level. There's a Viridian Forest, which is a whole level that's dedicated to the bug Pokemon. All the trainers have bug Pokemon.
Yeah.
And I think there are only 2 kinds in the base game. There's like a bee one and a butterfly one, which are called Beedrill and Butterfree. And again, the really imaginative naming continue.
Is that too early? That's an
Caterpie evolves into Metapod, which evolves into Butterfree.
Well, Metapod is one of my. I've always just had this soft spot for Metapod because I just love the uselessness of it. I love that it's like, and Callum was asking about this. It's like, it doesn't do anything. I'm like, but do you remember the episode when there's a Butterfree, and Ash gets a Butterfree? That's what's gonna happen. So you have to just play it. Just play it for like 2 moves, and then put it back in your thing. It's fine. Like you're gonna get some XP, and it's gonna evolve. I think I like the game design of that. I think that's clever to say to your audience, to the gamer. Like you need to have a bit of patience here. It's quite rare for games to be withholding something like that doesn't do anything. It's got 1 move, and it doesn't, and it's just going to keep hardening until.
Yeah, and they lean into more of it as the series goes on. There's like some Pokemon that are quite tricky to get, and they evolve in like odd ways that you'd never. You would find I'd be very surprised if you managed to stumble upon a lot of them. I don't know if I have a favorite Pokemon. I just enjoy that. I find the actual like game process quite soothing. Of you just like level up the Pokemon, they evolve, and you go and you fight the gym leaders, and it's quite chilled out. It's not that difficult. And that is a problem with certainly Sword and Shield, where it's so easy that a 6-year-old, admittedly you couldn't do it, Sam, but a 6-year-old can do it.
Fuck you.
Without like finding it, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not difficult.
Literally a 6-year-old.
It's just time and patience and playing the game. It's interesting to know where the series is going to go, because obviously nothing ever gets to die these days, and it's still popular. They're still selling the games. The Pokemon cards have come back in a reasonably big way.
Kids, my boy's not into them, but some of his friends are. He likes football cards more, which are the same thing, gambling for children. But the kids are still like, Pokemon cards are still pretty big, and
yeah,
I've always found it very confusing. All of the other Pokemon, like I could remember most of the 150, or I could at least.
Or you'd recognize them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do the Pokemon quiz. Who's that Pokemon? Or the Pokemon rap. Like
the Pokerap. There's something that series is wonderfully enshrined in the late 90s, isn't it? It's just everything about it, even down to that famous episode which isn't available anymore that gave all those kids seizures because of all the flashing imagery. That was the stuff of legend when we were growing up.
Yeah, and there's something you'd have. Yeah, I watched it. I was fine. Like, yeah, fuck you.
We get that. We got the. I distinctly remember someone bragging at school that they had like a virtual Rapidash or something, and we were like, "Oh, cool! What's like a special kind of like?" Obviously, we're too young to know what the word virtual means, especially in 1998. And it was like, "Oh my god!" And no, that's not a thing. That's made up nonsense.
Yeah. So, what is next for Pokemon? It seems to be what's next for Pokemon is adding more and more outlandish magic. Basically, like playing through and watching the TV show for Sword and Shield, because there's a TV show now which has all of the characters in, and has you fight Leon's in it and Go and all that, all the other people who are there, but they have the Gigantamax or whatever it's called, where the Pokemon, the Pokemon go big, and it only happens in this one place. Like what?
It feels they've done similar things, like in the Sun and Moon. It's like these crystals that you get that allow you to power up certain Pokemon, and they have like a form. They just change shape, basically. So I just think all of that's quite gimmicky, and I don't think it really adds to the game because it's actually quite boring. Because you can do that, which is great, and it's really cool. But then the other Pokemon does that as well, and then it's just a Pokemon fight again. And it's exactly the same.
Exactly, and it ends up just being like you get one shot at it at Gigantamaxing or whatever it's called, and then it's like, yeah, the other one does it, and unless you use it early, but then you're going to get crushed by the guy later. Yeah,
but it's just gimmicky, and the game process hasn't changed. I would like for it to be a bit more difficult, or for them to like have a difficulty setting where you could maybe like
it's just not in the DNA, is it?
But seemingly, there's a new one out, Violet and something or other. Well, seemingly, what they actually have done is just released a really, really shitty game. Like where all like I think they've basically just rushed this one out, and that is gaming. The current state of gaming is no game when it comes out and you're able to play it is fucking playable, and that's just like
we have it, and I've not. I didn't get it. It was a gift for Callum, and he's kind of taken my Switch now. And he's not really. He's kind of played it a bit, but I think I don't know. There's something about it though. Where it is. There is a lot to it, but it's got more gimmicks. I think now it's like Terrastall or something, where they just like they turn into gems. Like you get like a gem Pikachu now, and it's.
Oh.
I know, and you think, oh, that's stupid, and then maybe it's the children who are wrong, but who knows? But there is something. In some ways, we've been complaining that like Pokemon is just the same thing over and over again, which is true. But then they are adding these new ideas. They are trying to innovate. But as you say, I think it's maybe the fact that a lot of these Pokemon games, they're not maybe bringing enough, or what they are bringing that's new isn't enough. It isn't innovative, to the point where the hell are the games like Pokemon Arena or Pokemon Snap, or the ones where you could raise Pokemon, Pokemon Safari? Do you remember all of these great? I remember playing that on the N64 and taking photos of Pokemon, and it just being the most fun, and we just don't seem to be anywhere near that.
Well, it feels like we've come to the end of that. We've gone as far as we can on that basic premise where you could draw a really straight line between the first generation to this one, and that's fine. And those games, and old arseholes like me and you, or me especially, we're still going to play them and enjoy them, and they're going to be fine and interesting, because more and more as you get older, you just kind of want I want the things I enjoy, but again, I want more of that.
Yeah. Fuck you, you'll buy it.
But you've got to wonder, like your son obviously is a good example. They've got to try and get kids to play them, and when you've got that versus, I mean, even Stardew Valley, which is another game that's 10 years old at this point,
entirely derivative based off Harvest Moon,
again, the DNA from Pokemon is in that game as well, in terms of the top-down sort of aspect of it, and the way you move about and the dungeon exploring and all of that. But even Stardew Valley is so much easier to play and it's more fun to play because it's got more modern mechanics in it. And I think as we increasingly release more games, where there now must be thousands of Pokemon like that exist because they add like 100 every time they make a new game.
I know. Who can keep up?
Who can keep up? And also, like, it's impossible to keep all that in your head, so it becomes meaningless. Like, gotta catch them all is like, right, well, there's thousands of them. How can I possibly keep all that in my head?
Yeah,
I literally have to fucking like have an actual Pokedex I can refer to tell me which ones I haven't caught, because otherwise I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to continue to enjoy to revisit some of these games. This was something I wanted to mention. The fantastically, and I'm sure legal, 208 game DS cartridge I bought.
Well, obviously you owned all of those 208 games, and
of
this
course,
is
Sam.
merely a backup, which is a completely legal and legitimate thing to do, Dave. 100%.
Anyway, I clicked on one of these games to play, these games that I own.
All 208 in box form.
No,
just behind you. I can just see
box form. I have a whole room in my house. It's just all my physical media to back up all of the ROMs that I have. And one of the games is Pokemon like Black 2 or White 2 or something like that. And when I started it up, there's this big like screen explaining that it's actually not the original. It's not the vanilla game. It's not the original game. It's like a fan hack to make it harder.
Oh, right.
So there's a screen at the beginning basically saying that we really like this game, but it was a bit easy. So basically they've kind of like modded it so that it's more challenging. And I haven't actually played very much of it, but I think that's a fantastic idea.
Wow.
Because some of these games are a bit by rote, but you know, by editing it and saying sort of like, well, we'll just tweak the levels and we'll just tweak the stats so that it is more of a, you know, the Pokemon thing, like more of a, you've got to think about your type challenges and stuff like that. You can't just level your Pokemon up to level 80 and just fucking one shot every single enemy in the game. Like, it really does make it more interesting. Like, realistically, genuinely, without much, like, loads and loads of work, in most of these games, you can just spend loads of time leveling your Pokemon up at the beginning and then basically just fly through the rest of the game without ever having to stop.
I really wasn't aware that there was another way of doing it. So that's a good tip. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's a good... that is, I would be interested. And I think I'm tempted... you know, to just needlessly go to CEX and buy a Nintendo DS and get one of these cards. In fact, I think I even bought one that back in the day. I have no idea where it's went, but like just load up all the ROMs I want from my backup, obviously. And
well, it's a weird. But do you know what the reason for this is? It's because the state of physical media now, we're in this weird point where we've cancelled physical media, basically, right?
Yeah.
We've got Xboxes. It doesn't even have a disc drive. Even though I wanted physical media, I can't have it. And the same for everything else, which means that DS games, which you used to be able to pick up for like pence on the pound, you know, for what they cost. And we saw the same thing happen to like Nintendo 64 games and then PlayStation games, etc., GameCube games. Like now, DS games and 3DS games, they're like 40 quid. I bought this cartridge because I could not find Pokemon X or Y for under £40 online.
Jesus.
Like, there were some eBay auctions that had a week left, but what I have a job. I don't have time to be watching eBay auctions for Pokemon games.
No.
But you just can't buy them, and that's just because that's the cost, because they aren't making any more of them.
But you know what? This is. I mean, not like, you know, not to start a whole new discussion because we're going to wrap up in 4 minutes, but we like the ROM community, as much as there's a bit of illegality and all that stuff, but actually it's there to preserve as well, because a lot of these games do become so rare that people can't experience them. You know, that you can't. You have to spend 60 quid to play some Xbox original games because for whatever reason they've become sought after. So I think it's great. Like, more power to. Because Nintendo's not making any money off that. They're not making any money off someone selling a second-hand
you can almost liken it,
Pokemon,
and it's not quite this. It's not quite this, but like almost to like old movies that we lost. Like, I think in the next coming decades, there will be a thing of like oh, there's this Atari game from the 80s, but there aren't any more of the actual like arcade games left, and nobody thought to save the information anywhere, so it's
Look
just
at Doctor
gone.
Who. Wipes because everyone thought it was crap. It wouldn't need to be kept. And it's like it's not for you to make that judgment, is it?
And so that's why physical media will become a thing where I'm sure there are N64 games and original PlayStation games that, you know, only exist in a box in someone's attic, you know, and I don't think there's a massive clamour for it at the minute, but, you know, that is and I'm not even certain that a lot of them should be recorded for posterity because a lot of them aren't good. But it's always interesting in the development of these things that things just get chucked by the wayside.
And just, you know, we taught us that if you write stuff down and if you know, like history, we don't get to choose what's kept. We don't get to choose what becomes the foundational text of, you know, modern civilization. Thank you, Aristotle. Like, so I think we have to retain this stuff. We have to retain this stuff and look after it, and that's what these things do. And I can play a game from 30 years ago really, really well on my computer, on my phone, you know,
on your watch,
on my whatever, on my toilet, on my Wi-Fi connected toilet. So let's, you know, more of that.
My brother was talking about this. Let's do a quick 2 minutes on talking toilets. What's the purpose of a talking toilet? Right, I don't know a lot about this. This may be a mistake of a topic, but
if you have to ask, then you'll never know, Dave. That's the
my brother was talking about the other day because they'd been watching something on TV, and he's got a small child, and the toilet, it's about potty training, and the toilet talks to the little girl or the little boy or whatever, and it's basically like talks them through using the toilet. And obviously, this is just kids' TV, like trying to save you some parenting, which is like, good job.
Don't knock it, please.
But anyway, my niece has then like been asking about the idea of like, well, why doesn't our toilet talk? Like, can't we have a talking toilet? My brother was like, absolutely not. Why would I have a talking toilet? What possible purpose? Like, can you imagine? Like, oh, great shit, bro, really good job. Or like, would it be like a step counter where it times you, or like somehow like measures your blood pressure?
Let's gamify.
It's like,
let's gamify.
Gamify going to the bathroom.
go for a shite. Yeah.
You could have like family leaderboards, couldn't you, on the side?
Well, but how would you measure it? Is it volume versus speed? I think that would have to be fair, because, you know, like kids might be quick, but then they're not doing the same.
Not producing the same decibels, you know. Well,
okay.
I feel a little bit nauseated, so I feel like the podcast has done its job.
Yeah. I'm just gonna let's end on. We can vibe to a bit of Pokemon, and we can go back to playing our completely legal emulation that we all own. Because Dave, you know what? You got to catch them all. You got to catch them all right now. Here we go.
All 10,000 of the new Pokemon DLC. It's the kitchen cabinet Pokemon. So you've got Mustardamon and Ketchupa-chan and
pickled
sauerkraut
onion.
fits.
Yeah, I love it. Well, there's just as usual, Dave. Fuck you, you're back. There we go. Look at that fading out. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. Right. End of broadcast.
See you next
Thanks for
time
watching.
Who's That Podcaster?